Hello everyone. So in the last lecture we have seen what is respiration, what are the types of respiration, what is the function of respiration, or what events happen in respiration or during respiration basically. Then we have discussed the types of respiration, aerobic, anaerobic, on the basis of presence or absence of oxygen as well as on the basis of its location. Then we have discussed respiration in plants, which takes place individually in roots, stem and leaves. Then we have discussed the respiration in animals or in different animals. Since the respiration occurring through different mediums or through different modes, that's why we have given different names to the respiration, like the buccal respiration, then cutaneous respiration, pulmonary respiration, bronchial respiration. So this we have discussed in the last lecture. Today we will start from the respiration, human respiration and the human respiratory system. So let's start with the topic human respiratory system. Human respiratory system is the system in which or through which respiration takes place. It is a system of different parts or different organs which participates in respiration or in inhalation and exhalation, which helps in inhaling oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide in humans. So we will study different parts or the different organs which is present or which involves in respiration or which takes part in human respiratory system, or these organs form combinedly the human respiratory system. So the first part is nostrils, or more appropriately we can write external nostril. External nostril. We know that, I draw the diagram over here. So, human respiratory system starts with the external nostril. Now, what is nostrils? We know this is our nose. So, the opening of nose, that is a slit-like opening, a hole-like opening which is present in our nose, which helps in the exchange of gases, that is, which helps in inhalation of oxygen and exhalation of carbon dioxide, or we can say which helps in the exchange of gases between the individual and surrounding, is known as nostril. Nose is having two holes, or we can say two openings are there in nose, which is known as nostrils. We call it as external nostrils because it separates the individual from the surrounding, or it helps in the exchange of gases from between the individual and the surroundings. So first one is the external nostril. We can say this is the external nostril. Now we know that our mouth is again an opening. Our mouth opens into a chamber or cavity which is known as buccal cavity. Similarly, the opening of nose, that is the nostril. Nostril opens into a chamber. It opens into a chamber. This is known as nasal chamber, which is the second part of respiratory system. Nasal chamber. Is this the chamber, or the nostrils opens into a chamber or a cavity which is known as nasal chamber. Now in nostril we have to remember some points over there. We know that our nose contains hairs as well as some mucus is also there. So basically external nostrils is having, just right over here, it is having hair plus mucus. Nose consists of, or nose is having hairs over its wall, internal wall, and as well as mucus. It has mucus secreting cells which secretes mucus, which now what is the function of these two? Hairs and mucus both collectively function as the filtration. It filters the air which is inhaled by the individual. Whichever the gas, or when we inhale gases, that air or that gas is filtered, or that hairs present in the nose and mucus, what does they do? What is their function? They entrap the dust particle, the antigens, so that only the gas goes inside the individual, not that antigen or dust particle. So it is the function performed by the hair. And the mucus moisten the area so that the passage of air becomes, or it facilitates the passage of air. Basically mucus moisten the air to facilitate its entrance or its entry inside the individual. So this is the function performed by hair as well as mucus. Then I have told you nasal chamber is the chamber which comes after the nostrils. Then this nasal, it is having external nostrils. So there must be some internal nostrils also. So in this region, internal nostrils are present. Internal nostrils are present. So our next part is internal nostrils. Since we have external nostrils, then there must be some internal nostrils also. So this is the region where internal nostrils is present. Now next is, we know that this is our mouth. This is the palate, that is the, you can say, the bone which differentiate the nasal chamber, the nasal chamber from the buccal chamber. This is the palate which differentiate or which divides the nasal chamber from the buccal chamber or buccal cavity. So it is having uvula. It is having uvula, a flap-like structure. Now what is the function of this uvula? Wait. This, after internal nostrils, the part which comes is pharynx. And after pharynx, the part which comes is larynx. So we will discuss it stepwise. So this is the two pipes. This is the esophagus. And this one is the trachea. Now look over here. Now this is the internal nostrils. I have discussed this, I have explained this. Now this from this nasal chamber air is coming. This air is coming which goes like this and it enters into the windpipe. Okay? Then from this buccal chamber the food is coming. It goes into the food pipe or the esophagus. Now this area which is where, or which resemble the common passage for both food as well as air is known as pharynx. This region is known as pharynx. This is basically the pharynx. I am repeating. External nostrils opens into a chamber called nasal chamber. It is having internally or posteriorly internal nostrils also. Nasal chamber also have internal nostrils present posteriorly. Now this air, the air comes from the nostril, then it enters into the nasal chamber, then from nasal chamber and by going through the internal nostrils it enters into the windpipe. This is the windpipe and this is the food pipe. This is trachea and this is esophagus. This air comes and goes into the windpipe. Now this is the mouth. It is having its roof called palate, which differentiates nasal chamber from buccal chamber, buccal cavity. Now food comes from this side and then it enters into the food pipe. Now the area, the region where or which is the common passage for both air as well as food is termed as pharynx. Pharynx is what? It is the common passage. It is the common passage for both food and air. Got it? Air comes from here, then it goes into the windpipe. Food comes from the buccal cavity, then it enters into the food pipe. The region or the common passage of air as well as food, the area which is the common passage for air as well as for food is known as pharynx. This is the pharynx. Now I have mentioned a term called uvula. Since we know that whenever we open our mouth broadly and whenever we see it in the mirror, then we see posteriorly, bilkul at the posterior end we have two openings. We have two openings which resembles the opening of food pipe and windpipe. That is the trachea and esophagus. We have two openings when we broaden our mouth and when we look over it in the mirror. Then we see the two openings present at the posterior end, which is the opening of windpipe and food pipe. So we are saying that it is present it is present at the proximity. That is, the windpipe is present at the anterior part and the food pipe is present at the exterior part. Suppose this is the opening which is present in our mouth. So whenever we see at the posterior end, these are the two openings. So we are saying that the two openings are present at very proximity. So this uvula, what does it do? It closes the food pipe whenever we inhale. So we are saying that this is the common passage. This is the common passage. So when we inhale air, this uvula, or this is the flap-like structure. Uvula is the flap-like structure which covers the food pipe, the opening of food pipe, so that the air won't goes into the food pipe. And whenever we engulf the food, since it is the common opening, pharynx, I am talking about pharynx. This uvula or this flap-like structure, whenever we engulf something, the food particle, then the uvula, what does it do? It closes the windpipe. It closes the windpipe so that the food won't goes into the windpipe. समझ में आया? That is, जब हम air intake करते हैं तो uvula windpipe के opening को बंद कर देता है, क्लोज कर देता है, और जब हम एयर को इनहेल करते हैं तो ये फूड पाइप की ओपनिंग को बंद कर देता है, so that the food does not goes into or does not enter into the windpipe as well as the wind does not enter into the food pipe. So this is about the nostrils, external as well as internal, then pharynx. Now after pharynx, what we have to study is larynx. Now what is larynx? Larynx is basically this part. This is larynx. Now, the opening of this is the opening. The opening of windpipe is known as glottis. The opening of windpipe is known as glottis. It is having a leaf-like flap structure or leaf-like structure which helps in the regulation or which helps in the entry of wind into the windpipe. Now this portion, this upper portion is termed as larynx and the later portion is termed as windpipe or the trachea. Larynx is basically made up of 4 cartilages. It is made up of 4 cartilages. One is thyroid, which is 1 in number, then arytenoid, which is 2 in number, then cricoid, which is again 1 in number. So, this larynx is made up of 4 cartilages. This larynx is made up of 4 cartilages. One is thyroid, 2 are arytenoid, and the one is cricoid. Now, this is the basically this one. This part is basically the larynx. The opening of windpipe is known as glottis, and it is having a flap-like structure which is known as, this is known as epiglottis. This is known as epiglottis, which is a flap-like structure which opens and closes the opening of windpipe, which opens, it closes the opening of windpipe whenever it does not facilitate the entry of air. So, what basically the function of epiglottis is, it opens and closes the opening of windpipe. So, this is the glottis is the opening of windpipe. It is having a flap-like structure which is known as epiglottis. Just below is the portion known as larynx, which is made up of 4 cartilages. One is thyroid, other one is arytenoid, and the other one is cricoid. Now, if we see the structure of larynx, it is like this. It is a butterfly-like structure. This is thyroid. It is a butterfly-like structure which is having a flap-like structure which is known as epiglottis. This is basically epiglottis. And this is thyroid. This is thyroid. So, its structure is like this. Now, next, this larynx is having these part. Now, this larynx, I have told you that this larynx is made up of cartilages. Now, this cartilage protrudes out. This cartilage protrudes out in human male, or it forms a pointed like structure, or it enlarges during the puberty. During puberty, it enlarges and it becomes secondary sexual characters in human males, and that part then called as Adam's apple. That part then called as Adam's apple, which is the secondary sexual character in male, human male. This larynx, I have told you that it is made up of 4 cartilages. Now, this cartilage, one cartilage among them is protrude out, it becomes pointed, it enlarges during the puberty, and it becomes the secondary sexual characters in human male, and that part or that cartilage is then known as Adam's apple in human male. There is one more feature of larynx. Basically, larynx is known as voice box. Basically, larynx is known as voice box. Why does we call it as voice box? Because it produces voice. How does it produces voice? Larynx, if we see, larynx has two bundles of vocal cords. This is vocal cords. Now, this larynx is made up of bundles of vocal cord. This is the bundle which is of vocal cords or called as vocal cords. This is the opening of larynx. I told you larynx, it is the windpipe, it is like the pipe. So, I am talking about this region, it is having 2 vocal cords like this. Now, what happens whenever we inhale? Whenever we inhale air, this is the vocal cords. Whenever we inhale air, this vocal cords open. It opens like this, it widens up. Now, this air passes through this portion. Now, the air passes through this portion, and these vocal cords start vibrating at their places. And because of their vibration, it produces sound. That's why we call it as voice box. I am repeating. Larynx is having vocal cords in it. Now, what are vocal cords? These are the bundles of muscles. Now, what happens over here is, it's like larynx is like a tube. It is the windpipe only. It is the anterior part of windpipe. Now, it is the tube. It is having bundles of vocal cords. There are two bundles of vocal cords. It is remain in this condition. It is the normal condition. Now, whenever we inhale air, now this vocal cords, they widens up. They widens up from each other and the air passes through their gap. The air passes through their gap, and because the air passes, these vocal cords start vibrating at their places. And because of their vibration, we know that sound is produced with due to the vibration. So, these, because of their vibration, the sound is produced. That's why we call it as voice box. So, these are the two main features of larynx. The next part which comes after this is trachea. Trachea, which is 10 to 12 centimeter long, and it is made up of 16 to 20 C-shaped cartilages. Now look over here. These are the two lungs. This is the trachea. This later bifurcates into two bronchi. Now this is what? This is bronchi. These are bronchi, which left bronchi as well as right bronchi. This portion in biology, the diagrams drawn, the parts drawn at this side is termed as, or we consider it as right side, and this side is considered as left side. Right bronchi, this windpipe bifurcates into two branches, that is right bronchi and left bronchi, which enters into the individual right and left lungs. Now this lungs, they further divide, or they shows high rate of branching inside the lungs. These lungs are the main respiratory organ. These lungs are present in the form of pair. It is present in the form of pair, which is present, or its location is basically in the thoracic part. Now what is thoracic part? The upper part, that is the region present above the diaphragm. I will explain now what is diaphragm. This trachea, first you listen this. This trachea divides into two tubes, and these tubes enters into the two individual lungs, into the right lung as well as into the left lung. Now this bronchi, these are the bronchi, right bronchi and left bronchi. When they enter into the individual lung to their respective lungs, they again divide, and they divide further, or we can say they divide further, and this shows high rate of branching, just like the branches present in the tree. And these branches which is formed inside the lungs is known as bronchioles. These are known as bronchioles. These can be primary, secondary and tertiary. Suppose this is the bronchi which enters into the lung. It divides into primary bronchi. Now this primary bronchi divide into secondary bronchi. Now this secondary divide into again tertiary bronchi. So this is the primary, which divides into two, that is, which is secondary, and this further divide into tertiary. So basically they shows the bronchi divides into further bronchioles inside the respective, inside their respective lungs. Primary divide into secondary, this secondary again divide into tertiary, and finally this tertiary opens into the alveolar duct. Alveolar duct, which opens or which have alveoli, or you can say alveolar sac, and in which contains numerous, suppose this is, so this is the windpipe which bifurcates into two tubes, which enters into their respective lungs, right lung and left lung. This is the primary bronchi, which further divides into bronchioles. Bronchioles can be primary, secondary and tertiary. When bronchiole divides into the branch which is known as secondary bronchiole, secondary branch then further divides into tertiary and so on. And the last duct and the last tube, which will be known as, which forms at their terminal end, which forms alveoli at their terminal end. That last duct is known as alveolar duct. This will be the alveolar duct. That is, when bronchi divides into bronchiole, that is, it can be primary, then it branched into secondary, then this branched into tertiary. Now, this tertiary branches or bronchioles form the alveolar duct, which is the terminal duct. That is the last duct. And this duct at their terminal ends form the alveolar sac. Now, this alveolar sac has millions, or we can say many alveoli. Alveoli. It is like this. The structure is present is like this. Okay? So, bronchioles primary, which branch into secondary, secondary branch into tertiary, tertiary into alveolar duct, which is the terminal duct. With at its terminal end, or at its terminal end, we can say it has the alveolar sac, which is made up of many alveoli, a group of alveoli. We can say alveolar sac is a group of alveoli. So, this is about trachea as well as bronchioles. There is one more thing which we have to remember in case of trachea is that I have told you that it is made up of 16 to 20 C-shaped cartilage. That is, here C-shaped cartilage is present like this. Now, what is its function? I have told you this is the windpipe and this is the windpipe and this is the esophagus. It is having C-shaped, incomplete C-shaped cartilages like this. I am talking about hemisphere, hemispherical circle or rings. It is present in this way at the front part of windpipe. Now, what is the feature or what is the function performed by these cartilages? It provides protection to the windpipe in case or so that it won't collapse in the absence of air. In the absence of air, the windpipe won't collapse. So, these cartilages provides protection to the windpipe in that case. I am repeating, these C-shape incomplete. It is present at the front part, but it is absent from the posterior part. So, these C-shaped cartilages provide protection to the windpipe so that it won't get collapsed in the absence of air. So, these are the functions performed by C-shaped cartilages. This trachea is divided into bronchi. I have explained this. Now, this bronchi further divides into bronchioles. This 7th point we can say, this bronchi and bronchioles. Bronchioles. I have explained this. These are the bronchi, these are the bronchioles which is having bronchioles can be primary, secondary and tertiary. It shows branches. These are the branched bronchioles. The branches is like, we can say the branching present in the tree, it is like in this way, and which is having alveolar duct at their end, and at their end, at the end of alveolar duct, alveolar sacs are present, which is made up of group of alveoli. Now, what is alveoli basically? These are present in, the part which comes after trachea will be lungs, and in lungs we will study, or I have explained the bronchi. Lungs के अंदर हम bronchi and bronchioles पढ़ते हैं. These are the bronchi, these are the bronchioles. Now, what is alveoli basically? In 7th point we have studied about bronchi bronchioles, then alveoli. Now what is the characteristics of this alveoli? Alveoli is the organ, or it is the site of gaseous exchange. Basically, in complete human respiratory system, alveoli is the site of gaseous exchange. Here, gaseous exchange occur. Now, this lung is basically hollow from inside. It is hollow from inside, and it is having these branches called bronchioles. These lungs, basically, these lungs are pink in color, which is present in the form, or which is present in a pair. It is present in the thoracic part, that is in the thoracic region, that is the region present. The upper half of our body is known as thoracic region. It is present in the thoracic region. Now this lungs contains bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli. Now what are the characteristics of alveoli? Alveoli is basically the site of gaseous exchange. It is the site of gaseous exchange, or we can say it is the main respiratory organ over here, or it helps in the gaseous exchange. Now, what are the characteristics of alveoli? It is moist. Yes, it is moist, very thin. Its membrane is very thin, and its membrane, or we can say alveoli, is having abundant blood supply. So basically, these are the characteristics of any respiratory organ. So these are the characteristics which is shown by alveoli in case of humans. That is, it is moist, then its membrane is very thin so that the gaseous exchange occurs appropriately, or we can say properly, and then again it is having abundant blood supply. So that the blood is the only thing, or we can say it is the substance which circulate in our body, in our complete body, from each and every point to the different points or different regions. So it is supplied with the abundant blood vascular system or blood vessels, so that the oxygen, the gases which we have inhaled can reach up to the different regions of the body and where they can be utilized. So alveoli shows these types of characteristics. So it is the main site of gaseous exchange. There is one more thing which we have to remember in case of lungs. It is covered with a membrane known as pleura. It is covered with a membrane known as pleura. This is right lung and this is left lung. This left lung is divided into two lobes. Both the lungs are divided into lobes internally. This left lung is divided into two lobes, and this bronchi, I told you this bronchi divides into primary bronchioles. From that primary bronchioles, since it is having two lobes, so this bronchi divides into two bronchiole. This bronchi divides into two bronchiole, primary bronchiole. So because it is having two lobes, in case of right lung, this is the right lung, it is divided into three lobes. So this is the bronchiole. This divide into three bronchiole. This bronchi divides, in case of right lung, I am enlarging this portion. This bronchi divides into three primary bronchioles since it is having three lobes. This you have to remember, that is in right lung it has three lobes and in left lung it has two lobes. Since it is having three lobes, so the bronchi divides into three bronchioles, primary bronchioles, and each enters into their respective lobes. And in case of left lung, this bronchi divides into two primary bronchioles which enters into the separate lobes. So these are about the lungs. It is covered with a membrane called pleura. It is made up of, it is hollow from inside, then it shows the branches, and the branches is made up of bronchioles, primary, secondary, tertiary, then alveolar duct and the alveolar sac, which is made up of group of alveoli. These are the characteristics which is shown by alveoli, and this is the last or after this, there is the last part of the human respiratory system, which is known as the diaphragm. Now this is the, what is diaphragm? After this seventh, there is again a structure called diaphragm. After lungs, there is a sheet of muscles. This is the diaphragm. It is a sheet of muscles which plays a major role in breathing mechanism, and it differentiates or it divides thoracic part from the abdomen part, that is the thoracic region from the abdominal region. So it is the diaphragm, a dome shaped like structure which is made up of, or it is a sheet of muscles. It plays major role in breathing mechanism. This we will see in the breathing mechanism, we will study in the next lecture. It shows, this diaphragm shows the major, or it has a major role in the breathing mechanism. It is dome shaped and it divides the thoracic region from the abdominal region. So this is the human respiratory system, which consists of external nostrils, that is the opening of nose called external nostrils. I am repeating the complete system. External nostril, the opening of nose is known as external nostrils. It consists of hairs and mucus which provides protection in order to, or it entraps the antigen as well as the dust particles, and mucus moisten the air which is coming in the or which entering the individual. Then it is having, after that nasal chamber appear, nasal chamber open into the internal nostrils. After internal nostrils, there is a common passage for both food as well as for air, which is known as pharynx. After pharynx, the region which comes is larynx. Larynx is made up of 4 cartilages, thyroid, cricoid and arytenoid. It is also known as voice box because it is responsible for producing voice in human. Then the tube like structure which is known as windpipe or the trachea, which bifurcates into 2 tubes called bronchi. These bronchi enters into their respective lungs, that is the right lung and the left lung, which further divides into bronchioles, primary, secondary or tertiary, which later forms the alveolar duct, and finally the alveolar sac. Alveolar sac is made up of group of alveoli. Now after that, this trachea is made up of 16 to 20 C-shaped cartilages. Now the lungs, which is the main respiratory organ in humans, which is pink in color, and it is covered with a membrane called pleura. It is hollow from inside and it is present in the thoracic region. Now it is having these structures, bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli. And the last one over here is diaphragm, which is a sheet of muscles and plays major role in breathing mechanism, and it divides the thoracic part from the abdominal part. There is a point in alveoli which you have to remember, that alveoli covers 80 meter square area. Single alveoli covers 80 meter square surface area, which provides a large surface area for gaseous exchange. This you have to remember in the characteristics of alveoli when we have studied now. So this point was also there, that each and every alveoli, single alveoli covers 80 meter square area, which is basically the largest surface area, and hence in this way it provides large surface area for the gaseous exchange. So these are the characteristics of alveoli, and since we call it as the site of gaseous exchange. Now after this, we will study about the breathing mechanism in humans in the next lecture. So this much is all about today, about the human respiratory system. Thank you.